morning. Happy How of Happiness. This is my weekly series where I interview women in all walks of life, doing life. Real, authentic stories about women who are trying their best, giving it their all, creating joy from within, designing lives that light them up, getting stuck, falling, failing, all the things that we're all doing is what I want you all to hear about. This is not about toxic positivity. This is about you seeing what true happiness looks like and knowing that it is a choice and knowing that you can show up for yourself over and over again, no matter how many times you want or need to. So today I'm interviewing one of my dearest friends, Dr. Regina Koepp, who's a geropsychologist, and I'm so excited to share with you all just her experience and journey and, the ability for us all to relate to other women going through life in different phases and chapters and hardship and, just so many different chapters of this journey is so special and meaningful. And so I thank you for showing up and listening. And I thank you, all of my amazing women that I get to interview, for your vulnerability and authenticity in our calls. So Dr. Regina is joining us now. Let's on. Hi.
Hi.
Good morning. How are you, my friend?
Good. Oh, I'm glad it's working because I'm kind of out of the IGTV loop.
Oh, so you were like, how do we do this?
It's like, can I? Well, we figured it out. Yeah, we don't need to bore people.
That's what you have to do. It's like you just click to request to join the live, which random people do to me all the time when I'm doing a live, and they're like, so and so wants to join, and I was like, who
How,
are
how does this happen? How does this work? Yeah.
why do you want to be here with me live?
Well,
Uh,
I have some ideas why people want to be with you because you're pretty
Nave,
spectacular.
yay! I'm so glad we're doing this.
Me
So
too.
this really is a conversation about, like, and everyone I interview asks me this. I'm like, okay, what am I talking about and what are we doing and what do I need to know or prep for? And there's really nothing. Like, this is just meant to be a casual conversation about how we do happiness. And there's been so much talk about toxic positivity, and I just wanted to do this interview series to make a distinction between, toxic positivity, pretending everything's fine all the time and just slapping a smile on and dismissing feelings and pretending that nothing's a problem for us is BS, and
Yeah.
happiness is. And so I thought that by interviewing real women in all areas of life, doing all sorts of things with their lives, would be an opportunity for people to see that happiness is a choice, and we need to wake up every day with that intention on our hearts and in our actions. And there's nothing toxic about that.
Yeah.
I just wanted there to be like a very clear understanding about that difference. And so women just like you are coming on to just talk about your own journey with happiness. Like, it means something different to so many people. So I'll ask you, just like off the bat then, like, how do you do happiness, Regina? Like, what is it for you? And what does it look like, and what does it mean to you? How do you even define it, or how do you prioritize it?
Yeah. Well, first, I'm happy to answer that, but I think one of the things that I admire so much about the way you talk about happiness is that you have a real life version of it. It's not that toxic positivity that you were talking about. It's like life is hard. It will throw us challenges. And how are we going to adapt and adjust to those challenges, prioritizing our own health and wellness
Mhm.
and that of our family? And I think that those are key ingredients to happiness. Is life is hard, life will throw us challenges, and how are we designing our life and our well-being to adapt to those challenges? And for me, my journey is complicated. I have a very non-traditional life and background. As the only, I grew up very poor and the only one in my family to go to college. And my family struggles with a lot of mental illness and substance use issues and recovery and relapses and recovery and relapses and recovery. If anybody in your audience is familiar with that, that's the way it goes. And same with so that's the substance use side. And the mental illness side of my family is episodic. Like people, my mom would be depressed and get better and depressed and get better. So my life as a child was really complicated related to happiness. The two features in my life that I think are key to my happiness now, even as a child, are my mom, even though she struggled with depression, she always found her way back, like
Mhm.
always find her way to stability. She had 5 kids, was a single mom. She did what she had to do to, like, sometimes she would be in the hospital, but she always got us back together and found her way back. And I have, for a long time, I struggled with that. I had a lot of resentment toward my mom. Now, as a mother myself, and having my own experience with depression, not as severe as hers, but she's a hero in my eyes. I have
Mhm.
so much admiration for her that this as a single mom, she could get all of her kids back together after being in the hospital for severe depression, and that she could do her best to make our life together. So one key ingredient for me is the relationships and bonds, how key those are for me in my own happiness.
Mhm.
It's where I find my own, like, spirituality is in humanity and in connecting with other people, and in just the sort of pursuit of healing and redemption that's so spiritual to me.
Yeah.
And then the other ingredient is, like, laughter and humor and not taking myself too seriously or the world too seriously. So, and that was also key in my family as well growing up. So there was a lot of tragedy and loss because of just separations. And my brothers and I didn't know our dads. And there was so much humor. Like, my brothers are hilarious. It's like you walk into a stand-up improv studio if you hang out with my family. It's pretty, and we went to grad school together. I think I was pretty funny in grad school. Sometimes my humor is a little like Tourette's. It just, like, pops out of me. But yeah,
Very
so
true.
relationships and humor.
It's very true. I love that. I actually love reflecting back on the first time I saw you, which was when you walked into our first. So Regina and I went to grad school together. We got our doctorates in clinical psych, Stanford, 1,000 years ago. And Regina walked in, and I was like, "Whoa, who is this girl?" You were like so put together and like fashion forward, and you just like lived in this apartment by yourself in San Francisco. And I was like, what? This woman's like got it all going for her. And it was just like you were such a vision, and you are still. I mean, so
Oh,
just thinking about your humor, you're so funny. And it does, it's funny actually that you say that, because not more than 15 minutes ago, I was talking to my husband, and I was like, I laughed. He said something so funny to me. I'll actually share this because it's still so funny. So he said to me, the elf on the shelf? And so the elf on the shelf. So we have, an elf on the shelf. And he's like, the girls were telling me yesterday that there's some kids in their class that have, multiple elves. Like they have multiple elves in their house. And I'm like, what is this? Like, this is ridiculous. Like, what are parents doing? Now we need to have multiple elves on the shelf. Like, give me a break. So I told the girls that those kids must be really bad to warrant needing 2 or more elves. And I just like lost it because I wasn't expecting it. And as soon as I was like almost spit my tea out. And I was not expecting you to say that. I was like, Todd, like you just told the girls that those kids that have multiple elves are bad children. I can't spread that. And then after I laughed, I was like, I feel like I need to laugh more. I feel like I like haven't laughed as much like recently. I feel like I've just
yeah.
been focused on getting things done and workshops and hosting events and personal and professional and the Christmas Christ chaos and all the things that, you almost lose sight of some of the fundamental foundational elements to your just inner joy and your inner
Yeah.
peace. And so it's not sometimes until you laugh that you're like, oh my gosh, I needed that. Like I need more laughter. Like we need to do some more like funny things, because it just completely shifts your experience. Right? In that moment, completely shifts your experience. It's such a value.
Yeah, well, and the other thing about laughter and happiness and wellness is that when you're laughing with something, so not making fun of things or making fun of people, even if they're bad kids, um, like just like true humor where
Yeah.
it's not hurting anybody else. Um, the benefit of that is, especially if you're doing it like around a complex situation, like my husband and I have, whenever we fight, we end our arguments making a joke about the argument. And that's like we don't plan to do it. That's just what we do because we both really value humor. And it's also how we repair. Then we were joining in the conflict, but that's like, not a healthy kind of join. It's necessary, but it's not, it doesn't feel good. And then part of our process organically, naturally for healing our relationship after an argument is that we like join in something funny about what we're arguing about. But what the humor does is it helps you step back and have a meta view of the situation. And that's a really high level coping skill. Mm-hmm. And so like if you can step back and say, oh, this is actually quite absurd that we're fighting about this. And look at what just happened here. And we're making a joke about it and our roles in that. That actually is a sort of high level coping and analytical skill. So humor is great on so many levels.
Super healing. I mean, I know you're familiar with John Gottman's work. Having repair attempts through humor and laughing and taking the pain or the intensity out of an argument will help you just recover as a couple so much faster. You are very lucky that that's an organic experience for you guys as a couple, because for many of us, it has to be extremely intentional to be like, okay, this is getting too far or too heated, or we need to detach. And so the other benefit of having that humor at the end of an argument is it allows you to detach from the pain, from the suffering, from the intensity of it. And just allows you to get that almost like that breath of fresh air to reset. So for those of you listening that ever fight with your partner, which I imagine is 100%, think about how you could even try to integrate a little bit of laughter, like during an argument, at the end of an argument, just a way to break it and to cut it and to reset, because sometimes we kind of get locked in. Yeah. And that actually rings true for just suffering versus peace and joy, is that so many of the women that I work with feel just kind of locked in. Like, I'm just kind of stuck. I'm just on this trajectory. This is just my life. I'm just kind of here. And I don't see a way out that makes sense to me. And so I'm just going to kind of keep languishing. I'm just going to keep checking boxes and going through the motions, not realizing like how much possibility lies outside of that comfort suffering zone. And so it's just like a really nice reminder. I love for you guys that you do that with like just such an organic way. But even if you don't, you can integrate joy, humor, just like having some lightness into your arguments. I love that, especially during the holidays when we tend to fight a lot.
Yeah, and our house is very chaotic right now because our house is on the market, and so we're moving, and our lives are in total chaos and transition. And then the silly thing about like what's so absurd about moving is that your life is in chaos and you're in transition, and you have to have your house looking perfect. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's such a discrepancy between what's actually, and at the same time, it's actually very soothing. Like, oh, there is order in the chaos, here it is, my house.
Yes, that's so true. It's one of the things that actually you can really focus on having some control over in such a chaotic time, is just like that simple yet like exhausting plan of keeping your house in order. I can't wait to talk to you more about this, because I'm really hoping that you're going to be my neighbor soon.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
I did apply to that position. Yeah. Though I was actually looking I think around the corner from your house, there's a house where your friend is selling her house.
Oh, do you want it?
I do, but I can't afford it. So.
Oh, is it the one that about?
Wait, say that again.
Is it the one that I had posted about? Yeah. That sold with multiple offers over asking.
Yeah, in 5 minutes.
In 5 minutes. Yeah, really bananas.
But good for them.
Market's cuckoo, but hopefully it's slowing down a little bit so it's easier for you guys. But I mean, that's such a great point. Like when we were moving to this house from our old house, the twins were, they were 3 months old. And so every time we had somebody want to see the house, I'd have to like take the babies out from their naps and like it was cuckoo pants. It was just so stressful. But at the same time, holding on to the vision of what's coming next
Mm-hmm.
was so grounding that it wasn't about the chaos. The chaos was a pain in the neck. You know, when you're in the process, it's tiring and you're like, what am I doing? And what did we sign up for? And what are we thinking? All those questions, because it's so taxing on you right now. But you're doing all of this right now for what's to come and what's ahead, and holding on to that vision of hope and optimism and just piece of what's coming for you makes it worth it. Like the work now feels worth it because it's in the name of something bigger,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And yes, it's for the good of the whole. Our,
Yeah.
we have two little kids, and this neighborhood, we live in the heart of Atlanta, and our neighborhood is our neighborhood is awesome, and it's gotten a little less safe,
Mhm.
and we don't have access to good public schools, and so we're moving for more access to public schools and
Yeah.
safety and just a better quality of life overall. So
Right.
yes, for the good of the whole.
That's right. Aligning your life with your values, right? So, what happens to us on a micro level and on a macro level is that we feel it in our lives when we're not living in alignment with our values. We get uncomfortable, we get frustrated, we get irritable, we get scared, we feel unsafe. There's things that are happening that we're like, this isn't right. Doesn't feel right to me. That's a sign that we're coming against our value system. So, even something as big, which is a huge life change of a move, even something as big as a move is really about ideally, if it's by your choice to move, aligning your life with your values and getting
Yeah.
closer to that vision of like what a happy, healthy life looks like. So, Regina, you have such an inspiring story of just where you've come from and all that you've overcome. And here you are, like you rolled so far from the tree, um, very intentionally and with a lot of deliberate action taking and not settling.
Yeah.
And that, if people knew your whole story, would just find that like incredibly inspiring for their own stories and their own journeys. Tell us about, like, even as an adult, you've come so far, you're so successful, you have a beautiful, happy family, you're doing amazing with your career. All things like from an outside perspective look like they hit the nail on the head. Tell us about maybe a hard day. Have you had a tough day recently or lately? Have you had a hard day? Like, how did you navigate the hard day? How did you get through it? Did you keep high expectations? Did you push yourself? Did you surrender? How did you handle a hard day?
Oh, it's such a good question. I think every hard day is a little bit different, depending on how I'm doing and where we're at as a family, and where I am in is the ground shifting? Is it steady? Um, so daily our days are pretty hard currently. So my husband is an entrepreneur. I'm an entrepreneur. My husband is going to stop taking his salary so they can reinvest it into the company. So that we're just going to rely on my salary for a while. So this is like stressful, hard, lots of transitions. And then yesterday, the school calls and says, your 4-year-old is punching kids. So I have a 6-year-old daughter who is really responsible and pro-social and careful, and she's had more interaction with adults because she's been like she's a little medically vulnerable, so she talks a lot with adults, and she's fine. So but she's just around doctors and adults a lot. And then my 4-year-old, maybe also because his sister gets this other attention, is more kinetic. He's in his body. He's more less relational, more physical, and he's the youngest in his pre-K class. So I wonder if that has something to do with it. But he is like punching kids. And so the school called me yesterday and is like, no, they email and they're like, you must respond to this email within 24 hours. When can we talk to you? You need to give us time? And I was like, oh my God, this is horrible. And there's a saying in like family systems that the parent is only as like satisfied as their least satisfied person in the family. So as the least satisfied child. So Donovan is my 4-year-old's name. And I'm like, oh my, this, like, what else does Donovan need? Like, what's going on? Like, what needs are not being met? What needs am I not meeting? And, I'm just like, oh, I can I cuss in here?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So I'm just like, for fuck's sake, like another thing.
For sake, but it's
Oh, okay. So I'm just like, what else can, the universe add to our plate right now? And and then and then back to the humor piece. So then I told another friend, and the other friend was like, yeah, my son had an issue with sticks and kids, and so he could either have a stick or be around kids, but not both. And I was like, well, the sticks are not our problem, so just don't be around kids because you're just hitting with your fist. So so then I think like, okay, back to the humor and stepping out of it. Like what does like trying to step back and see, what does Donovan need that's not getting met? Like what are we doing that's not addressing his issue? But initially my first response was not that. Like if I'm honest about my first response, I was just like angry with Donovan. Like why can't he keep his hands to himself?
mm-hmm.
Like just get it together, kid. You've been on
Yeah.
this earth for 4 years, don't you know by now? And my first thought was just like, why? There's just another thing that we
Yes.
have to deal with. We were just in the urgent care waiting for 2 hours on Sunday. Now Monday he's hitting. It's just like urgent care for my other kid. It's just, every day something. And then I think in that moment, instead of fighting, so he's fighting, right? And then if my response, I think in that moment, my inclination was like not to fight it. Like what? So I responded immediately to the school, was like, thank you so much for reaching out. I'm available now or whenever, of course. And we're going to talk with them today. But um, I think in that moment, it was a leaning in, or I don't know if it's so much surrendering because I don't want to be passive with it, but it's like I'm trying to open myself up to learning what he needs
Mm-hmm.
versus um, applying the hammer,
Mm-hmm.
which sometimes as a parent, I don't understand. I was never very sadistic. I would always be more likely to harm myself than somebody else. But somehow parenting like brings out this monster, like where I'm like, where are these feelings coming from that I just want to like ah,
Yes.
I haven't really experienced that before.
Totally.
And so instead of leaning into that hammer, and of course like I wouldn't harm him, but the feeling is there. But instead of leaning into that hammer, I'm just like, okay, I'm trying to reframe it to like, what does he need? And what is he not getting? And where could I be offering more of what he needs?
Mm-hmm.
And so trying to step back and see the bigger picture. I think that was a hard moment yesterday. I think other hard days are just like when I'm stressed and the kids need a lot from me,
Yeah.
like every mom probably.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like part of that experience for you was like just even talking about it now, I'm sure to so many is so refreshing to hear a mom be able to just say, like, I have such strong feelings when my kids do X, Y, and Z or don't do X, Y, and Z. There's this pressure on moms to like be peaceful and kind and loving and patient all the time. And like, you don't get upset because you're more mature and you're older and you should not be that way. And you're like, yes, I've lived, 40 some odd years and I feel rage come out of me.
Yeah.
I when my kiddo does or says a thing, and that's totally normal, and it's normalizing this experience for women of like allowing for feelings. And so part of that journey, even though the part that was action oriented was so much around pivoting and leaning in and saying, okay, so this is what it is, so there's a surrender to the reality of the day switching gears unexpectedly. So people that would not be willing to surrender to the reality of a situation are the ones who are avoiding the email, not responding, not dealing with it, resisting it. And you're like, this is what it is. I have feelings and thoughts about it, and I have a choice to make. And my choice is to lean into it and to maybe solve or to join or to figure this out together. So even on a hard day, you honor those feelings, you normalize them, you name them, but then you still allow yourself to take action and pivot And that's huge. I mean, that's honestly one of the biggest struggles so many of us had during COVID was the resistance to surrendering to reality.
Oh, yeah.
There was such resistance against reality that it made for such hard times, more so than needed to be. And so for us to be able to take a hard day and to face it head on, even though it sounds scarier and riskier and more unknown, it literally will save you from all the excess suffering that you don't need to do. Face it head on, lean into it, see what it is, call it out, name it, claim it, decide what you're going to do about it. But when we try to like put our heads in the sand, now we just prolong the suffering, and we're not going to be our best for ourselves or for our kiddos or anyone else that we're loving and caring for. Like, you avoid that. Now he's going to be getting whatever consequences or repercussions, right? And now you get to be part of that journey with him and part of that support for him because you're choosing to face the discomfort and fear. So
Yeah.
yeah, awesome.
Well, I will also say, in the last year and a half, I have been working on my own self-compassion, and the what Donovan needs when he's hitting is not the hammer, right? He needs compassion, and he needs support, and he needs to get whatever need is not being met.
Mm.
The So do I. So like, that process of um, taking a step back and saying like, I'm frustrated, I'm experiencing rage. Rage is a human experience. If we don't acknowledge it and give ourselves some, you know, compassion around our current experience, we're going to be less likely to show up for our kid in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so, um, you know, yesterday it wasn't. I kind of gave some big feelings a minute ago when I was talking about this. Actually, yesterday the feelings were so brief. It
Mm-hmm.
was because I've been working so much on my own self-compassion. And it wasn't like it sat in there like, you know, get your shit together, man, as a 4-year-old. It was like, oh, you know, again. And um, and it's his first day back from a long break, and like a lot of things I'm sure were happening for him emotionally. But if I am not giving myself that same emotional support and that same emotion, like compassion and walking alongside myself,
Mm-hmm.
um, I can't effectively or as well do that for my child who needs me.
Right.
And so that also was what, in my hard days, that is what I am focusing on, is like how to be more self-compassionate.
Good. That's awesome. I love that. I love that there has been such a beautiful shift towards normalizing self-compassion and encouraging it. And I don't know if you got Kristen Neff's new book, The Fierce Self-Compassion, if you've read that yet.
No, I'm going to.
I have it on my shelf. I can't wait to read that. I have such a list of books that I'm getting through very slowly. But it's such an just such an important and impactful coping strategy to be compassionate towards yourself and to others. And compassion doesn't mean you're letting yourself off the hook or taking the lazy way out. It just literally means you're showing up for yourself as you would need, as your kiddos might need. Um, Tell us about, before we end for today, if there is anything that, like, when you're having a tough day, do you have any like guilty pleasures or any little like vices that you use to cope with a hard day? Like, you know, when leaning in doesn't seem to work, or when your feelings aren't so much just a kind of a blip on the radar and they really linger and they kind of haunt you, or is there any like funny, like guilty pleasures you partake in or
I
bring
like
in?
watching Ellen Tube.
Is it what?
Like watching Ellen Tube. I
Yes.
watch Ellen Tube when I'm when I want to laugh. I
Yeah.
like try to look for a comedy. Honestly, when I'm having a bad day, I don't want to. Sometimes I just do want to like get into bed right after I put the kids to bed and watch TV. Sometimes it's like watching Ellen Tube on my phone so I can laugh,
Yes.
or a funny show, you know, like a funny series. Um, I've been really into lately the instead of like when I have the urge to scroll social media, I'll not do that. And now I do the New York Times. I try to do the crossword puzzle. Because
Mm-hmm.
my brain is saying like, oh, I don't want to do what I'm doing. I need a break from what I'm doing. You know, if I'm focusing hard on something and then I just want to veg on for a minute. I don't want to scroll social because that's not very productive. So now I've just been like going over to the New York Times games and do like there are these pattern games you can do and crossword puzzles, and I've just been doing that for a couple of minutes, and then yeah. So that's kind of a guilty pleasure. It's like a break, but
Yeah.
it's not as fruitless as social media scrolling.
Right, right, right. Yeah, those are great. I think it's important for all of us to like have those things. Like I love binging Selling Sunset. There are accounts I love scrolling on because they do add some like humor
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
active changing very quickly. Something about reels is like I love when I have a chance to like go into some reels. I love them. I love seeing all these amazing places in the world. I love hearing
Yeah.
music. I love seeing people's creativity. I love the inspiration that comes from them. Like, so do you, right? Like, this is the idea is that we all have different thresholds for our feelings, for our pain. We all have different coping strategies. We all have different triggers and traumas. Find what works for you. You know, if you love the crossword puzzles and you love Ellen Tube, do it. And if you love, you know, like silly binge Netflix TV, do it. Just find your thing for yourself without the pressure of what you should or could be doing otherwise. And I thank you for being here with me today and sharing time and your just vulnerability and being so authentic with our audiences and sharing some of your own story. It takes a lot of courage to show up publicly and share some of our pain. And so I'm really grateful for you for doing that with us today.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me. And I hope it was helpful to people just to maybe feel less alone.
Absolutely right. Absolutely. All right. Well, after this, I'm going to pop on and find out what's going on with the move.
Okay.
Okay. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.